Welcome to the Career Slay podcast, the show where we interview people who love their jobs and discuss career growth, fearless leadership, and creating a life you love. I'm your host, Kelly Poquiz Burke, a marketer turned executive coach, and I'm here to help you lead with courage and slay the fear in career. If you're a fan of these conversations and want to dive deeper into your own career and leadership questions, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com. Catherine Connolly is an award-winning entrepreneur, marketing leader, author, and engaging speaker. Catherine co-founded My Yearbook at 15 and grew it to eventually become The Meet Group, a NASDAQ-listed social dating and live streaming company connecting millions of active users globally. She led brand strategy and marketing for The Meet Group through mergers, acquisitions, and rebrands, and then left The Meet Group after a successful exit. Catherine graduated from Georgetown University and holds an MBA from the Wharton School of Business and is the best-selling author of Designing Success. Talking to Catherine was such a masterclass in redefining success on your own terms. From launching a startup in high school to leading a $500 million acquisition, Catherine's journey is a testament to grit, curiosity, and staying true to what really matters. I loved her reminder that success isn't just about numbers. It's about the people you meet, the joy in building something meaningful, and the boundaries you set to protect your well-being. Her story and her book, Designing Success, is a must for anyone ready to build a life and career with purpose. Welcome to Career Slay, Catherine.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I know we met on LinkedIn, but I feel like we're kindred spirits and we were meant to be friends.
I agree. I mean, we have a lot in common and a lot of people in common and talking about just like what a small world it is.
It is such a small world. And I think as I follow your journey on LinkedIn, I feel like even just like our values and thinking about how success is, like it's so aligned. And so I'm excited to dive in and share your story with our audience. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me more about what was your childhood like? What were you like as a kid?
Yeah. So as a kid, I was the cutest kid ever. And no, but I mean, as a kid, so I had a normal childhood. You know, my parents are both engineers, and I would say, I was definitely on the nerdier side. Like I would go to nerd camp every summer, and which I enjoyed. I grew up with two older brothers. I have Dave, who's about 15 months older than me, and Jeff, who is about 12 years older than me. Because there's such a big age gap between me and Jeff, he went to college when I was only 7. And while he was at college, he started developing his first business. And so growing up, I saw entrepreneurship as like this option, this life option you can take. So seeing Jeff build that company made me want to build my own company. So even though, I otherwise a very normal kid, but I had this huge exposure to entrepreneurship from a super young age. And I think that was, just a huge motivator in like how I just even thought about authority or thought about like what I wanted to do when I grew up. Because, I would go to my parents' bring your kid to work day. And I would contrast that with like going to my brother's office. And he had an office in Palm Springs, California. He'd have a foosball table, which was really cool. We'd go and have tacos during lunch. So, the things that matter to tweens. But he was busy. So he put my brother Dave and I to work. We would like be packing packets and like with mailers, like it was an admission essay editing service. That was like my summer job, except, because of my age, he paid me with Monsters Inc. and Shrek DVDs and, access to a pool. So
that's amazing. That is so cool to have that exposure at such a young age. And I'm guessing that influenced you to start your own company in high school. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so for sure. So I think, being able to have that exposure at such a young age meant that Dave and I, we were really just looking for an idea. We didn't have that little voice in our heads that would say, oh, you can't build that. That's too hard, or you don't know what you're doing, or, that didn't exist for us because we saw Jeff build something. We saw him, successfully exit from that company. And so when we were new in our high school and looking for a way to meet new friends, we're flipping through a yearbook in Dave's room, and we just started saying, oh, these should be online. And that was how the seeds for my yearbook started. And we're like, okay, well, what features would it need? And it was just very natural how we talked about it, like, well, we should actually create this. And so my brother Jeff, he used to come over for, dinners once in a while, usually at least once a week. And we're having, sitting around having some chicken cutlet. And we pitched him the idea and he's like, I want to join you doing that, because he had read about Facebook in a Harvard alumni magazine. And so he was like, oh, this sounds like Facebook for high school. And so he came in to join us. So then it was the three of us. And we're like, okay, well, now we're a team. Let's find developers, because none of us know how to code. So that's an important, that was an important thing. So we found our developers using Elance, and we found Google to really be the age equalizer. We were just searching, how do you buy a domain name? How do you do any aspect of it? We were Googling and finding the answer and just getting to work, how to draw up specification sheets and pen on paper, and make wireframes. And so we're drawing up, hundreds of pages of those, sending them to our developers in Mumbai. It was a very busy time. So we were, doing that until sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, while still having to be up for 7:30 in the morning homeroom at our high school. So it was a kind of a crazy period. One that I don't know, being a teenager, I guess, is how you get so little sleep and function. But we were excited. It wasn't like it was like, stressful because we're working. It was like, oh, let's do this. And we were just so excited to be, getting something out there. And then when we finally launched in our school and people started joining, then that was an even better rush.
Wow, that's incredible. And just to give people an idea of like, what was like the timeline to just like go from like idea to get something off the ground?
It was a few months. Yeah. So it was actually a very short timeline, really. And I think that was partially, I would say it's because we launched with an MVP and it was bare bones, but it really, we're just like, let's put this out there and see what people do. When we launched it, we knew there were going to be bugs, and we were just like, let's get people on this. But yeah, it wasn't a very long timeline. Like in terms of high school time, a few months seems like a few years, but yeah, it still felt like, oh, we've been doing this forever. Like, where can we get, we need to get out there. But like looking back, it's like, oh, that was compressed. That was a compressed timeline.
Wow. So, I mean, you were a sophomore when this launched. And what did you do after you graduated high school?
I decided to go to college. I went to Georgetown, and it was actually kind of funny. So, especially at the time, I don't know how things are different now, but I remember I would have, interviews with, different journalists and stuff. And what I noticed was the West Coast journalist always asked, like, why are you going to college? The East Coast journalist always asked, what college are you going to? So there was a very different, I guess, cultural thing of like what the typical path would be. And so I knew I wanted to go to college for one. Like I mentioned before, major nerd. I love learning. I wanted to go to college. And for two, like, the company at the time, we raised our Series A when I was a senior in high school. So that was $4.1 million in late 2006. And, despite that, I knew that the company could go to zero at literally any time. And I didn't want to risk not, kind of risk that this thing I had been looking forward to since, I saw Jeff go to college when I was so young. I wanted to make sure that, I did it. And obviously if I needed to take a pause from school, I could have, but I really wanted to just go through college with the rest of my cohort at the same time. And so it wasn't even like on my radar to consider.
What did you study?
Business. So I was operations and information management major, and marketing with a minor in psychology. So.
Oh yeah, huge nerd.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, that's like 4 things. Normally one person would say like one thing, like studied one thing.
It was a double major with a minor. It was very easy to double major in business courses. And I will say I did have pretty much every Friday off because I was in the business school, and we don't work that hard.
Oh, yeah, that's so funny. I also double majored, so I get it. I'm also a secret huge nerd as well, yeah. So which is why we're friends. After you graduated college, you went back to go work for My Yearbook, and it grew and got acquired. So tell us about kind of the highs and lows of the journeys of being a tech entrepreneur.
Yeah. So another high was still actually within college. We had to raise our Series B, which is an easier process than our Series A, because obviously we had, it's easier once you already have some funding in, and the company was doing well. We raised our Series B in July of 2008. So timing wise, that's just a few months before, Lehman Brothers collapsed. And, our timeline was delayed just a few months. Who knows if we could have gotten funding? So, luck played into our journey in so many times. So it's like, obviously you can't control when the markets are going to collapse. But we were incredibly lucky that, we raised then and then didn't need to do another raise. The initial idea was really Facebook for high school. We pivoted within the first few weeks, basically to be about meeting new people. And so with that, the name kind of wasn't great, but that's what, the name of my yearbook, it still kind of gave classmates.com vibes, but, we stuck with it. But it was about meeting new people. We had social games. We found ways of engineering virality and getting people to join. And all of that was obviously very exciting, but we were only available in English. We saw that as limiting our growth and, something that we wanted to change. And so in 2011, it was right actually as I was graduating college, we entered a definitive agreement to do basically a SPAC-like deal with a company called Kpasa that was already public. Basically, they had $6 million in revenue or so. So very small. We had maybe 30 million. So it wasn't like we were very big either, but we were the larger entity. And we did this $100 million SPAC-like deal that brought us public. And so for 2011, we became a public company. So that was a huge adjustment in the terms of just when you're private, if things aren't going well, you can just not say anything. When you're public, you have to obviously say things. And so it was at a time for the company too, when all of our traffic was going to mobile. So we invested in mobile very heavily. And so we kind of so we were public, but at the same time, it's but we're basically controlling a declining web property while building up the mobile side and just saying to our investors, there will be money here. We're going to invest everything we got basically in this mobile platform, but no, we don't make money on it right now. 12 years in was actually when we created what became our biggest feature. And so it was a live streaming video feature that we launched in at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. So it was, obviously we were very early to video, compared to, most places got to it more towards the pandemic. But we had built it ahead of that. And so, that became our biggest feature. And it was, clearly working from kind of the start. And it's just so interesting to me that came, a dozen years into our journeys as entrepreneurs. The company was doing fine. We had a team, we had all that. But the company started doing exceptionally well when that happens. And then that's what led to our early 2020. We announced that we would be acquired. Our company at that time was called the Meet Group. And then we became Parship Meet Group, which is also owned eHarmony. And that was a $500 million deal. So that was pretty exciting. That brought us back private. And so that was another high along the journey, of course.
Certainly another high. But what I love about kind of the narrative, your story, your journey, is that there was never clear certainty that it was going to be a win. You were trying different things, seeing if it sticks, seeing if there's market demand for it. You're constantly betting on yourself. Was there a moment in that journey where you realized you had made it? I mean, aside from getting acquired for $500 million.
No, there just wasn't. It was always I remember in 2013, things were especially difficult because that was when web revenue was down. We had to do, it was just a tough time. I remember being feeling how hard it was. And this was after $100 million exit. And that's still no, I still, how do we continue to build this thing? This is hard. Even at that point, it's you don't make it. Because even when you have the $500 million acquisition, it's oh, that's nice. But you're still worried about the next thing. Or no, I don't want to say worried as in an anxiety thing, but you're still building. You're still okay, well, that's different. Things are going to change. But it's more of a next chapter. It's not you didn't complete the book. You just entered a next chapter. There's also some difficulty around so our company was, pretty big. We had some of the largest dating apps in the US. This is, after my yearbook, which we renamed to Meet Me, we had Tag, Scout, and Growler, which are all, great brands, but none of them were household brands. And so in the tech world, there's there's these unicorns that are worth billions of dollars. And it's and we weren't that. And so it's so there's this kind of this binary thinking way of thinking is like, oh, well, you're either worth $0 or you're worth $1 billion. And so being comfortable with just being like, oh no, we had $100 million exit. Like that is great. It is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in like the tech world, it's just like, but it wasn't $1 billion exit. And so I think that even just like how even talking about it with people, it's like, oh, are you still doing that app thing? And it's like the incredibly successful company. Yeah, I'm still doing it. And I would catch myself doing it too, where it's just like, oh, knowing like objectively that it was doing well, but at the same time being like, oh, well, it's not a household brand. So, it's not that big of a deal.
Just that little app thing that I do.
Right. Whatever.
It's just fascinating because like unequivocally you are successful, right? You have achieved success. You made it, right? And
thank you.
It's still, comparison is the thief of joy. Like it's human nature to just continuously think, well, but it could have been better. But also I think that's what drives innovation is that like hunger for continuous improvement, right?
Right. Because we always wanted to have like the next big feature. And
right.
And like, even though like, yes, like success wise, it was definitely a successful company. And what made it successful wasn't our exit, or the number of users. I guess kind of how we defined success as we were building the company was more about how do we make meeting new people fun? And for that, when I think about success, I think of like one of our streamers, Holly, who, I developed a little bit of a friendship with. And like, she made a lot of money live streaming. She was able to quit her job and like just do that full time and like had like, and did amazingly well with it, making a lot of money doing that. And then I think of like, the relationships, like there's been a number of Meet Me babies. We used to send them onesies, Meet Me branded onesies, and, just all the like relationships that spread from it. So I think like, thinking about what the success means to me, it's more about like where I was in my life at the time. So it's like, I think through building the company, those were the things I valued the most. So that's what, to me, what success felt like, being able to have this huge privilege of working with these people who you love, these people who you respect so much, who are so smart, and doing that and doing things that you find meaningful.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I think there's a lot of like heart and passion behind what you just said. Tell me more about the book. So you decided to write a book, Designing Success. What inspired you to write that? So
guess what inspired me to write it was really a conversation with my friend Alyssa. This was after I left the Meet Group. So I was just enjoying my time playing with my, at the time, like 6-month-old daughter. She very rarely called. And so, I saw that she was calling. I was like, oh, I need to answer this. And she, was just so overwhelmed, so stressed out, so frustrated. Her job was just like a nonstop onslaught. Like they would just pile more work on her and pile more work on her. And she would do it and she would do it well. And she was like, how can I just keep working harder? And I'm like, I'm not sure that's the problem here. You're doing multiple people's jobs. They're not giving you a promotion. Like the problem isn't you. The problem isn't how you're adapting here. You shouldn't adapt in this situation. And it highlighted how important our careers are to how that we perceive the rest of our life going. And so she had 2 kids under 4. It was a lot of negative, like toxic self-talk that didn't reflect reality. Like her children obviously loved her very much. She's a fantastic mom. Like absolutely no question. She's a fantastic mom. And she was also fantastic at her job, but she didn't feel it because she was so overworked. She was missing sleep. It was just a lot. I wrote this book for Alyssa because I was like, this is what I think we're all feel, so much of the time. And I wanted to write a book that hopefully gives some practical tools and strategies for helping with burnout, but also make people not feel alone in these feelings. And so I think, you can really design your environment to be one that supports you so that you can thrive and actually have, however you define success is how you should design your environment to support.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Everything you just said like hits home. And I think I am your friend, Alyssa, because it's like when you're in that period of time where you're balancing work and life, it can feel, and you're a high performer, it can feel like if I drop a ball, then that's on me and it's my fault, right? But what you're saying is that no, it's not you. It's that there are just too many balls.
Right.
So how do we design success by redefining success? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's by redefining success, but also it's also designing success by how can we create environments that set us up to do well. That set us up not to have too many balls, or to better recognize when we do have too many balls and need to put things down. Because I think that that's something that a lot of times, especially when you're very driven, you're working really hard, you don't have that time to reflect and think back. I was like, oh, these are things I should be doing differently. And so that's why I wanted to kind of give like these toolkits for people to realize, oh, this is an area I need to work on. I need to work at better setting boundaries, or I need to work at better connecting with other people.
Yeah. 100%. How do you define success for yourself today?
Yeah, it's really having that flexibility. It's having that freedom to work on what I want to work on, and to be, present with my family, while also working on something meaningful. And so that's kind of my North Star. And it feels, it feels warm and it feels exciting. It does not feel stressful. So that's how I define it.
Yeah, I think, in beating cancer, realizing that time was like the ultimate resource that we had that we couldn't get back. We could always make more money. We could always figure out ways to, build a team, get more of a title. But like that time, it's a unrenewable resource. And it's like how you spend that is so important, and it has to align with your values.
Yeah. And I think honestly, during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of people realized just how important their families were. Not that families weren't important before, but with so many people all of a sudden working from home and kind of embracing like this new, like big lifestyle shifts, I think it really brought home and how important these other areas of your life are, that like you might say that you care about your family, that you care about your community, that you care about, the other domains in your life. But if that's not reflected in how you're spending your time, then it doesn't really matter if you say you value them, if you're not actually putting in the time to, cherish them.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. I'm curious because you come from an industry where entrepreneurship, it's a grind. Like you are working a lot. It's a lot of, sweat equity put in. How do you balance that with achieving success and having that time and that freedom? Any advice that you would give to an entrepreneur who's struggling with that? Yeah.
So I think, as an entrepreneur, there's just always going to be something else that you could be working on. And so you have to create that boundary that you're going to make time for yourself to, do the things that matter, that matter for your health, that matter to your family, and actually carve out that time. So like the thing is, you have to actually set the boundary and set the time, because so frequently the reason that you're overworked and overstressed is because you're not setting the boundary for yourself. Yes, there's always going to be opportunities, and you're going to miss some opportunities, but your health, your sanity is more important than that. And typically, frankly, a lot of the things that people spend time on are things that they might not need to be continuously tinkering.
Yeah.
Like there's like the done is better than perfect idea, where it's just like, okay, well, you did this, it's out there. See how it does first, and then change it. Because I think that there's probably some Venn diagram, perfectionism and entrepreneurs. But I think being able to set aside some of those tendencies and realize, okay, things are going to be imperfect, and we're going to learn from that, I think is incredibly helpful in just thinking of how you structure your time too. Because it makes it okay that you maybe can't do that one opportunity because it just does not make sense for you where you are in your family, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about it, because there is probably going to be another opportunity. A lot of times you forget about all the opportunities you do take because you kind of just are saving onto the regrets.
Yeah.
It can be therefore helpful and motivating to kind of keep a track of your wins and be like, oh no, I did do these things. And hitting those milestones is something that you should celebrate, because there will always be another milestone to chase. And so being able to pause and say, let me celebrate this one.
Yeah, that's incredible. If there was one message that you wanted people to take away from the book, what would that be?
Kind of on the sense of, there's always going to be roadblocks on your path. it's going to be winding. Sometimes you're going to have a week where, you need a root canal and both kids are sick and you have this final presentation you also need to do. And that's going to happen. You're always going to have weeks that just aren't great. But the best way to create luck in your life and to kind of get through those roadblocks is by focusing on your connections. How can you deepen your connections with others? How can you give back to others? Because that's how, that's going to be the greatest source of luck on your journey.
Wow. Yeah. Really, that's what life's all about, is connecting with other people and making authentic connections. So I love that. What role does purpose or passion play in finding success? And what role does resilience or grit play?
Mm-hmm. So I would say purpose has a big role. You want to find what you do meaningful. I think that that's a natural desire. Like you want to enjoy what you're working on. I'm actually not that into passion if we're talking about what you're working on. And the reason for that is like, so obviously I come from dating apps and they're like, oh, wow, you must be really passionate about dating. It's like, no. The only thing I'm passionate probably about in that was like, I am probably passionate about spreadsheets, but that's a weird passion. And that's like not something you can build. So I feel like there's like talking about like, oh, you should be passionate about that actually adds so much pressure. Cause then it's like, I need it. What am I passionate about? Like that can feel like a big ask. And so I'm kind of lowering the bar and saying, do something that you're curious about and chase that curiosity, because that's going to be where you can do just constant learning, constant improvements and keep you interested. Because if it's just something that you're passionate about, that might not be there. Mm-hmm. But if something that you're curious about and you think you can continue being interested about, I think that that's kind of the bar you need. That's where you can find that purpose. And so I think that passion is too high a bar, because a lot of times that passion develops years in, and to get started or to get, you need to get there first. And that kind of just starts that spark of curiosity. In terms of grit and resilience. So yes, you're going to have, I have a chapter on when it's time to quit. And quitting, especially for successful people, we typically think of it as something that's like
failure, right?
Failure. Yeah. It's failure. And it's just like, it's not noble to quit. Like it's like a bad thing, but you kind of have to reframe it and think of quitting as a way that you're making time for the things that actually are servicing the things that you want to do. You should have a limit of when you quit something, and you should figure it out kind of before you're in the project. You should have a sense of like what that limit is and when to call it quits. But you shouldn't call it quits too early. And so what's useful about setting those criteria beforehand is that way when when you're actually in the situation, you're not going to be controlled by the emotion, by the sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, I need to keep investing in this. Maybe it'll work this time. And instead to kind of be able to draw that line and say, okay, I need to quit, or say, okay, I told myself I would give this 6 months. It's only been 3. Let me keep powering through. And so you can use the kill criteria kind of 2 ways to kind of foster that resiliency and grit, while also realizing, okay, now it is actually time to change course.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to like when you understand what's important, then it makes it easier to reframe quitting as not failure, but choosing.
Exactly. It's choosing.
So looking back, what advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
Oh, that's hard. So the advice I'd give myself at 15, I would say was probably to realize that the next opportunity is going to be there. I think I would try to focus on like, really enjoy the journey, because that's the fun part. It's not just, trying to move to the next thing. It's really just enjoying the path there, and be sure to like, set yourself up to enjoy that path.
Wow. Yeah, that's so important. And I usually ask that question for your 20-year-old self, but I figured like your 15-year-old self, since you got a head start. If you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would those be?
Fun, wild, and fulfilling.
Amazing. You've had such an amazing run, Catherine. I'm so excited to see like what you do next. How can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So go to my website, cconnelly.me. That's CCONNELLY.me. And you can find my email, LinkedIn there. And there's other resources. I also like to do free office hours and coffee chats and just connect with others. So please join me there.
That's awesome. And don't forget to get Catherine's book, Designing Success. Thanks you so much, Catherine, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Kelly.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Weld Reply. This episode was produced by Asia Lane and Michael Burke, with editing by Ethan Weil and Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're ready to level up, pivot, or lead with confidence, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com.